Thunder cracked across the valley just as a scream tore through the storm. Raymond Hale slammed the brakes, his truck fishtailing on the wet dirt road. The tires bit into mud as his headlights cut through sheets of rain and fog, illuminating the shadow of the Hilltop House perched on the ridge. It stood like a jagged tooth against the sky, its silhouette flickering white with every bolt of lightning. The scream came again, faint, distant, but undeniably human. Rocky, his loyal German shepherd, shot up from a passenger seat, barking furiously. His hackles rose, his deep growl cutting through the hiss of rain. Raymond's heart thudded in his chest as he squinted through the windshield. For just a second, in a flash of lightning, he thought he saw someone or something standing in the upstairs window, a figure, motionless, watching him. And then it was gone. He swallowed hard. "Easy, boy," he muttered, reaching over to calm the trembling dog. "It's just the wind." But Rocky didn't relax. His gaze never left that dark, empty window. Raymond killed the engine. The storm howled through the valley, and for a brief moment, the house seemed to breathe, the shutters rattling like a slow exhale. The smell of rain and old wood filled the air. He pushed open the door and stepped into the cold night. The metal gate shrieked in protest as he opened it. It felt like the house itself didn't want him there. The townsfolk had warned him, "Don't go up there." That morning, at the only gas station for miles, the old attendant had stared at him like a man already doomed. "Son," he'd said, voice dropping low, "your Aunt Helen wasn't crazy. She was scared. That place up there, it remembers things. Don't stay after dark." Raymond had forced a grin. "I've seen worse than ghosts." It wasn't bravado. After a decade serving overseas, he'd seen what fear could do to people. He thought he was done with fear. Now, standing before the rotting porch of Hilltop House, he wasn't so sure. The key turned with a reluctant click. The heavy front door creaked open and exhaled a rush of stale, cold air that hadn't moved in years. His flashlight cut through the darkness, scattering dust like tiny fireflies. The living room looked frozen in time. Stacks of books, a faded floral couch, a porcelain teacup beside a cracked window. The kind of stillness that felt wrong. "Guess you didn't like company, huh, Aunt Helen?" he muttered, his voice echoing oddly, as if the walls were swallowing a whole. Rocky stood at the doorway, head low, refusing to cross the threshold. His growl was low and warning. "Come on, boy," Raymond said softly. But the dog wouldn't move. His eyes were fixed on the long hallway stretching into shadow. The flashlight beam slid over peeling wallpaper, family portraits, and a crooked clock on the wall. Helen smiled in one of the photos, young, radiant, standing beside a man Raymond didn't recognize. In another, a group of children laughed in front of the same house decades ago. All of their faces seemed to fade when the light lingered too long. Then he noticed it. Every mirror in the house was covered, each draped with white cloth, corners carefully pinned. Even the smallest hand mirror on the entry table was hidden from sight. Raymond frowned. "Okay, that's not creepy at all." On the mantel above the cold fireplace sat a sealed envelope. His name was scrawled across it in trembling cursive. Raymond. He hesitated before opening it. The paper was brittle, the ink smeared in places. "If you're reading this, it means I am gone. Do not stay here past midnight. The house remembers everything I tried to forget." He read the words twice. They made no sense, and yet the dread curling in his stomach told him they meant something very real. He looked at the old clock again. 11:47 p.m. Rain lashed against the windows as he moved through the rooms, inspecting the place. Everything was coated in dust and silence. Then something caught his eye at the foot of the staircase. A neat, deliberate line of salt poured across the first step. Raymond crouched. It wasn't random. It was a barrier. Rocky whined from behind him, pacing nervously, his tail tucked. "Okay," Raymond murmured, forcing a shaky breath. "That's weird." He brushed the salt aside with his boot. The moment he did, the air shifted, a cold ripple that raised goosebumps along his arms. He started up the stairs. The old would groan with each step, echoing through the house like distant whispers. Halfway up, he froze. A scratch, then another, and then a slow, dragging sound, heavy, deliberate, moving across the floor above him. "Hello," he called out. His voice sounded small, thin against the wind. Only silence answered. The second floor was darker than the rest of the house. Doors lined both sides of the hallway, all shut except one, the attic door, hanging ajar, its rusted padlock broken. The smell hit him before he reached it. Burnt wood and old smoke. He lifted the latch and pushed it open. His flashlight beam wavered over blackened rafters and forgotten furniture shrouded in sheets. The air was thick with ash. Something glinted in the middle of the floor. A toy car, small metal, one side scorched as if from fire. Raymond crouched and picked it up. The paint had melted off, but faint letters were carved into the bottom, TW. Then a whisper, soft, almost tender, brushed past his ear. "Don't take it away." The flashlight flickered and went out. Raymond stumbled backward, heart slamming in his chest. From below, Rocky barked wildly, claws scrabbling on the wood. Then, with a thunderous slam, the attic door shut. Darkness swallowed everything. He threw his shoulder against the door and burst free, tumbling down the stairs. Pain shot through his arm as he hit the floor. Rocky was there instantly, whining, pressing close. The storm outside had stopped. The air was still, unnaturally still. The old hallway clock ticked faintly. Raymond turned his head toward it. The hands pointed straight up. Midnight. The second hand wasn't moving, but the ticking continued. He stood slowly, trying to catch his breath. "Just the house," he muttered. "Old wood. Weird acoustics." He didn't believe it. Neither did Rocky, who stared up the staircase, teeth bared, growl low. Raymond turned toward the fireplace, meaning to light it, and froze. On the mantel above the letter sat the toy car, wet, burned, and faintly steaming, as though it had just come from the fire. For a long moment, Raymond just stared at the mantelpiece. The toy car sat exactly where it shouldn't, wet, burned, and steaming faintly in the cold air. He reached for it cautiously. The metal was icy, not warm as he'd expected. Whatever had happened in that attic, whatever moved this thing, defied explanation. Rocky stood rigid beside him, staring, low growls vibrating in his chest. The dog's instincts had saved Raymond more than once overseas, and that same warning hum now crawled to the house like static. "All right," Raymond muttered, forcing a shaky breath. "You win. We're staying downstairs." He set the car back on the mantel, grabbed his duffel, and started a fire in the hearth. Flames flickered to life, pushing shadows into corners. The light helped, a little, but the house didn't feel warmer. As the fire cracked, Raymond's thoughts drifted to Aunt Helen. He barely remembered her, just a faint scent of lavender soap and the soft humming she'd do when she visited his mother decades ago. Then, suddenly, she'd stopped coming. His parents never explained why. Now, standing in her house, he could almost feel her presence. It wasn't comforting. He took out the letter again, reading the line that haunted him most. "The house remembers everything I tried to forget." What could she have possibly meant? Rocky padded toward the corner of the living room, sniffing the old carpet. His ears twitched, and he began pawing at a loose floorboard. "Find something, boy?" Raymond asked, kneeling beside him. He pried up the board. Beneath it lay a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Dust puffed into the air as he unwrapped it, revealing a handful of yellowed photographs tied with twine. The first showed Helen, smiling in the sunlight, holding the hand of a young boy, maybe 8 years old. The back of the photo read, "Tommy, 1958. Another showed the same boy sitting on the steps of the Hilltop House, holding the same toy car now sitting on the mantel. Raymond's stomach tightened. T.W. Tommy Whitmore. Helen's son. So she'd had a child. One nobody ever mentioned. A soft creak echoed from upstairs, the sound of a door slowly opening. Raymond's head snapped up. "Stay," he whispered to Rocky. But Rocky didn't listen. With a sharp bark, the dog bolted toward the staircase, claws clicking against the wood. Raymond grabbed his flashlight and followed, the beam cutting through the dark like a knife. At the top of the stairs, the air was colder again, thick with the smell of smoke and something else, faintly sweet like old candle wax. The attic door stood wide open. I closed that, Raymond muttered under his breath. He stepped closer, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. The beam caught the burned rafters again, and something new. On the wall near the floor, scrawled in black soot, were 3 words. He never left. Raymond's heart slammed. The letters looked fresh, the soot still smudged at the edges, as if written by a fingertip moments ago. Behind him, Rocky growled low, for standing along his spine. His eyes followed something moving in the shadows, something small that darted across the floor and disappeared behind a box. Raymond aimed his flashlight. Nothing, just an overturned toy chest, its lid half broken. He stepped closer and nudged it open with his boot. Inside were children's things, blocks, crayons, a cracked leather shoe, and an old drawing in faded pencil. A man, a woman, and a little boy standing in front of a house on a hill. The boy had no face. Lightning flashed outside, throwing the room into momentary brightness. In that split second, Raymond saw it. The faint outline of a small figure crouched in the corner, motionless, watching him. He blinked, and it was gone. Rocky barked furiously, teeth bared. Raymond backed toward the doorway, heart hammering. Okay, time to go. He turned and rushed downstairs, Rocky close behind. The fire had nearly burned out, though he'd just lit it minutes ago. He added more wood, hand shaking slightly, and sank into the old armchair. Rocky pressed close to his leg, whining softly. Tommy, Raymond whispered. The name felt strange in his mouth. What happened to you? He turned one of the photos over again. On the back, beneath the boy's name, faint pencil marks spelled a date, August 17th, 1961. A second line had been added later, in Helen's unmistakable handwriting. The fire took him, but he still knocks at night. Raymond felt his blood run cold. He looked toward the window. Raindrops slid down the glass in uneven streaks, tapping lightly, once, twice, then a third time. But the sound didn't come from the window. It came from the front door. 3 deliberate knocks. Rocky rose, growling, eyes fixed on the door. The wind had died completely. The house held its breath. Raymond stood slowly, every nerve alive. He reached for the doorknob. And on the other side of the wood, faint but unmistakable, came the voice of a child. Can I come in now? The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving a brittle, cold quiet over the Hilltop House. Raymond sat at the edge of the worn armchair, staring at the toy car on the mantel. Every instinct in him screamed that the house was alive, not in the literal sense, but something old, something trapped, lingered here. Rocky nudged his shoulder, whining softly. The dog's amber eyes flicked repeatedly toward the bookshelf against the far wall. For some reason, Raymond felt compelled to look there, too. It was an ordinary shelf, lined with Helen's books, novels, faded journals, and a photo album. But one book protruded slightly, unlike the rest. Raymond tugged it gently. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a low click, a section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow doorway hidden in shadows. His heart raced. Well, that's convenient, he muttered, shining the flashlight inside. A spiral of stone steps descended into darkness. The air that rose from below was damp and earthy, tinged with smoke. Rocky growled low, tail stiff, stepping closer to Raymond as if demanding he think twice. But curiosity, or perhaps guilt, drove him forward. They descended. The walls of the narrow staircase were blackened with soot. Faint scratches caught the light. Childish drawings etched into the plaster. Stick figures. A small house on a hill, letters too faded to read. Raymond's chest tightened. Helen had hidden something down here. Or someone. At the bottom, a small stone chamber opened before them. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by their entry. In the center of the room lay a wooden box, old and splintered, locked with small rusted clasp. Raymond knelt and opened it. Inside was a silver locket, tarnished but intact. Engraved on the back were Helen's initials. Next to it were 3 small crosses carved carefully into the wood. Beneath them lay a folded note in shaky handwriting. Forgive me, I couldn't save them all. Raymond swallowed hard. Something inside him froze. Helen had kept this secret, and it wasn't small. The temperature dropped sharply. A cold draft, unnatural and sudden, swept through the chamber. Rocky whimpered, ears pinned back, tail tucked tightly against his body. He pressed close to Raymond, growling low. Then a giggle, faint, childish, echoing off the stone walls. It wasn't hostile, but it was enough to make Raymond's skin crawl. The sound came from the far corner of the room, where shadows clung thickly. He froze. "Who's there?" His voice sounded small, swallowed by the stone. No answer, just another soft giggle, fading like a whisper on the wind. Shaken, Raymond climbed the staircase as fast as he dared. The house seemed to tighten around him, the walls groaning as if unhappy with his discovery. That night, sleep brought no relief. In his dreams, he relived fragments of fire and smoke. He saw small hands reaching out from darkness, their tiny fingers grasping for him. He heard screams, children's voices muffled by smoke and ash. And in the center of the dream, Helen herself, holding a small boy, her face etched with fear and sorrow. When he awoke, his pillow was damp with sweat. On the floor, just beside his bed, he noticed small ashes, fine black powder scattered in an almost deliberate pattern. Rocky was already alert, pacing, whining, then scratching furiously at the floorboards near the fireplace. His claws dug into wood with purpose, as if sensing something hidden beneath. Raymond knelt beside him, heart thundering. "What is it, boy? What did she hide down there?" The scratches grew more frantic. Each tap sounded like a heartbeat echoing through the silent room. Rocky barked sharply, backing away from the fire, and fixed his gaze on a spot on the floor that had seemed ordinary moments ago. A chill ran down Raymond's spine. He could almost feel the weight of the past pressing up through the boards. Helen's secret, Tommy, the children, the fire, it was all buried here, somewhere beneath the surface. And Rocky had already found it. The room was silent again, but the sense of waiting lingered, thick as fog. Something or someone remained below. And Raymond knew instinctively that the next discovery would change everything. For now, all he could do was watch Rocky, tense and alert, listening to every tap and scrape as the house whispered its secrets. The next morning, the Hilltop House seemed quieter, almost deceptively so. The storm had passed, leaving a cold, brittle sunlight slanting through broken shutters. But Raymond couldn't shake the unease that clung to him like a second skin. Every instinct he'd honed in the army, every sense trained for danger, screamed that the house wasn't finished with him. Rocky, however, had never been wrong. The German shepherd patted the fireplace, sniffing the floorboards, tail stiff, and suddenly began digging furiously. He scratched and pawed with a purpose that startled Raymond. "Rocky, wait," Raymond said, rushing over. But the dog's determination was unstoppable. His claws ripped through the old wood, splinters flying, until a faint hollow thud echoed from beneath the floor. Raymond knelt, hands shaking, and pried the boards away. Beneath lay a wooden trapdoor, dark and weathered, sealed with rusted iron hinges. He lifted it with effort, muscles straining, until the smell of earth and old decay rose from the darkness below. The beam of his flashlight revealed a stone-lined cellar, descending steeply into shadow. Rocky growled low, ears pinned, and pressed against Raymond's side as he took the first cautious step downward. The cellar was a time capsule of tragedy. Burnt toys lay scattered across the flagstone floor. Charred dolls, melted wooden blocks, a small train warped by fire. Piles of old children's clothes, yellowed and brittle, lay in corners. And then, to Raymond's horror, he saw them, small bones, soot-covered and fragile, collected carefully into neat bundles. His stomach churned. "Oh, God!" he whispered, stumbling back a step. Helen, she didn't. He realized the truth in a sudden, crushing wave of clarity. Helen hadn't harmed these children. She had saved them in death, hiding the remains from the corrupt orphanage owner who had tried to erase their memory after the fire. Every precaution, every whispered warning in her letters, it had all been protect them, even in death. Rocky whined softly, sniffing at the air, and then barked sharply. The sound echoed in the stone cellar, and immediately the house seemed to respond. The air grew colder. Lights flickered above them, the broken bulbs of the main floor trembling and sputtering despite being far away. Whispers filled the room, soft at first, then insistent. "Set us free! Please set us free!" Raymond's skin prickled. He swallowed hard. "Helen," he said, "is that you?" A faint, sorrowful voice answered, barely more than a breath. "Set them free, Raymond, set them free." He felt a presence brush past him, cold and intangible, small, childlike hands pressing briefly against his arms. Rocky growled and bolted toward the stairs that led to a lower chamber Raymond hadn't noticed before. "Wait! Rocky!" he shouted, fumbling to follow. The dog's paws pounded against stone as he barked furiously at a faint glow ahead. Raymond's flashlight trembled in his hand, the beam slicing through shadows that seemed to shift and twist unnaturally with each step. At the far wall, Raymond finally saw what Rocky had been leading him to. 3 small coffins, carved from dark oak, rested side by side. Each one bore delicate markings. Tiny crosses etched into lids, the initials of the children carefully inscribed. The glow from within the coffin room was faint, almost ethereal, emanating from some source Raymond couldn't identify. He knelt slowly before them, feeling a weight in his chest that pressed him toward the floor. His voice caught as he whispered prayer, unsure whether he was speaking to God, to Helen, or to the lingering spirits themselves. "May you rest now," he murmured. "May you finally be at peace." The house responded violently. The beams above groaned and cracked, sending dust raining down in choking clouds. The floor beneath him trembled, and somewhere in the dark, a distant, agonized wail rose, piercing through the cellar walls. Raymond's hand shook as he pressed into the lids of the coffins, each touch trembling with awe and fear. Rocky stayed close, his body rigid, growling low as if warning the house itself that they had crossed some sacred threshold. From the far corner, the whispering voices rose into a chorus, a childlike chant that made the hair on Raymond's arms stand on end. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The glow intensified, and Raymond felt a warmth brush against him, soft and fleeting, like fingers stroking his cheek. For the first time, the terror in the house was tempered by something else. Relief, sorrow finally given release. He stayed kneeling there, chest heaving, listening to the echoes of the voices fading slowly into silence. Each breath of wind from the narrow vents above seemed to carry a piece of the past out of the house. Helen's secret finally acknowledged. The children's spirits finally unbound. Then, just as he began to rise, the house shuddered again, violently this time. A beam overhead cracked loudly, and a cloud of ceiling dust rained down, coating the floor and his shoulders. The glow in the room flickered and intensified for a brief moment, as if warning him. Something else, something deeper, still lingered in the shadows below. Raymond looked at Rocky, whose growls had softened but not disappeared. The dog's gaze was fixed on a section of the stone floor near the back wall. His claws dug into the stone, scratching furiously, more insistently than before. Raymond followed his gaze, chest tightening. Beneath that patch of stone, he could feel it. Something buried, something Helen had hidden even from him. He pressed his fingers against the cool, rough surface, and for a fleeting moment, thought he felt tiny fingers brushing back. Whatever lay beneath that floor wasn't just remnants of the past. It was alive in memory, in sorrow, in the unresolved anguish of decades. The house had allowed Raymond this discovery, but it was clear that its secrets were not done with him yet. He looked down at the coffins again, whispered another prayer, and made a silent vow. He would uncover the rest. Whatever it took, he would face the darkness beneath the Hilltop House. Rocky barked once more, sharply, urgently, as if to say, "We're not finished yet." Raymond swallowed hard, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. The house groaned above them, the walls whispering, and in the shadowed corners he could feel the past waiting, patient and relentless. Something was about to break loose. The storm returned with a vengeance that night. Rain pounded the roof, lightning split the sky, and the wind howled through the broken shutters like a chorus of angry spirits. Raymond stood in the cellar, Rocky pressed close, ears flattened, teeth bared. The house seemed alive, thrumming with tension. The stone walls groaned under the weight of decades, and a deep, unsettling rumble vibrated through the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling in thick clouds. Raymond gripped the edge of one of the coffins for balance, heart hammering. Then it happened. A bolt of lightning struck the hilltop, and the floor beneath them split with a thunderous crack. Stones and splinters shot up as the cellar shuddered violently. Raymond threw himself over Rocky, shielding the dog as part of the ceiling collapsed with a deafening crash. "Rocky!" he shouted, coughing through the dust. The air was thick with soot and the acrid smell of old timber. Through the chaos, he heard a faint, trembling voice, unmistakable and warm. "You found them, now let them rest." Helen, her final words cut through the storm, clear and comforting. Raymond's eyes stung, but he held on to the moment, memorizing the tone, the feeling of love and sorrow embedded in it. When the dust finally settled, Raymond pushed himself upright. The cellar was partially collapsed, but he could see what mattered most. The 3 small coffins were intact, though shifted slightly, resting now at the edge of a broken floor panel. And there, in the faint lightning glow, were the spirits of the children, small, glowing outlines that shimmered like morning mist. They smiled, faint, tender smiles that lit their faces with the innocence that had been stolen from them decades ago. Raymond's chest tightened. He whispered, "Rest now, it's okay." The children's forms began to fade, rising in soft white light, and as they disappeared, the house itself grew still. No groans, no whispers, no drafts, only the sound of rain tapping gently on the roof. For the first time, Hilltop House felt empty, peaceful, and finally at rest. Raymond knelt by the coffins, brushing dust from their lids, heart heavy yet calm. He noticed that the partial collapse had revealed a hidden stone slab in the far corner of the cellar. It was worn with age, but clear enough to read. Carved into the stone were Helen's initials, beside the children's, TW, and the other 2 small sets of initials that Raymond had never been able to identify before. Her secret, a secret of love, not madness, was carved into stone for all time. She had protected them, even in death, and now the house bore witness. The storm finally broke with the first pale hints of dawn. Raymond emerged from the cellar, pulling Rocky close as he climbed the soaked, broken steps. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, and the mist hovered around the Hilltop House like a faint veil. Days later, in the small cemetery beside the Hilltop House, Raymond oversaw the burial of the children's remains. 3 small coffins rested gently in the freshly dug graves beside Helen's own. He placed his hands on the wooden markers, feeling the rough grain beneath his fingers. "I'll see you're remembered," he whispered. The wind carried his words softly across the empty graves. Rocky sat beside him, unusually calm. No growls, no whining, only the quiet presence of a loyal companion. As the last shovelful of earth covered the graves, Raymond straightened, wiping sweat and rain from his brow. He felt a weight lift from his chest, a sense of closure that had been decades in the making. Back at the Hilltop House, Raymond and Rocky prepared to leave. The house loomed behind them, its broken shutters catching the soft sunlight piercing through dissipating storm clouds. For the first time, it seemed almost welcoming, quiet, empty, and at peace. Rocky sat at the rusted gate, tail slowly wagging, eyes fixed on the house as if taking one last look. Raymond patted his loyal companion on the head. "Let's go home, boy," he said, voice gentle, tired but relieved. "She can rest now." Raymond glanced back at the house one last time. No shadows, no whispers, no glowing figures. Only the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow. The Hilltop House had revealed its truth, and in doing so, freed not just the spirits of children, but the memory of Helen herself. He exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging. The dog nudged his hand with a wet nose, eager to move forward, eager to leave the lingering weight of decade behind. Raymond smiled faintly, feeling a sense of finality that he hadn't felt in years. The house had demanded courage, patience, and heart, and they had all been tested. Yet, in the end, justice had been served in the quietest, most haunting way. Love had won, even in death. As they walked down the winding road toward the distant highway, the morning sun glinted on the puddles and glowed on Rocky's fur. Raymond glanced at his companion, amber eyes meeting his. "We did it," he whispered. The world felt larger now, full of possibilities beyond the Hilltop House, beyond sorrow and fear. He shook his head, smiling wryly. "They warned me about the Hilltop House," he said, voice low, almost to himself. But only you, Rocky, proved why they were right. Rocky barked softly, tail wagging, and together they disappeared into the morning mist, leaving the house behind. Finally at peace, finally silent, and finally free. If you enjoyed Raymond and Rocky's chilling journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more stories like this reach you. Hit the bell too. You won't miss the next spine-tingling adventure.